we are starting now our workshop about lights and shadows, about ORCID integration. And so thank you, all of you, for being here, for registering for this workshop. And well, I think it's better if you present yourself, Paloma and Magdalena. Yeah, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My name is Paloma Marina Raifa. I work at ORCID as an engagement lead currently in the consortia team. And Alicia, Magdalena, and myself will be presenting today around first steps with ORCID in institutional repositories mainly. So yes, we will have a couple of presentations that we are recording, and then we will jump into breaking groups where we are going to discuss the matter in more detail, and you will be able to talk, ask questions, and we will follow a couple of questions that we already have. And yes, that will be it. And of course, those sessions won't be recorded.
Yes, Magdalena?
Yes, hi, good morning. My name is Magdalena André. I'm the local at TUV and the local repository manager. We have an institutional repository for publications. It's not a repository for research data that is handled by another department. So I'm going to tell you what we did with ORCID and what we are going to do in the future with ORCID, and I'm going to handle the metadata breakout session later on.
Okay, yes, and I am Alicia Gomez. I am also working at the TUV, and I am leading the Centimetrics and data visualization group. But in our group, we also are managing the consortia for ORCID and also for DataCite. I will be talking about how to start with ORCID, how to also to create a community, how to which outreach resources we have that we can use also to for an ORCID integration and for an ORCID implementation in our institutions. So as Paloma said, this is our agenda for today. Sorry, I did use our local timing. So we will start with short introductions. I think it's okay because we are very few people. We are also having some presentations. With these introductions, we will also we are also using a Mentimeter. I realized that some of you already started to use that. I put the link on the chat for this Mentimeter, and you can go into the link. If not, I can also copy the code here. Okay, if you go to Menti and you copy this code, there will be some questions, only 3 questions. And then we will have 3 short presentations. And then, as Paloma said, we will go to the breakout sessions and the feedback of those breakout sessions. So if you would like to start with the Mentimeter, I am sharing the screen so that you can see the answers that we have. The first question is, do you have experience with the integration of ORCID within a repository? We have 3 people for now, so we should have
Alicia,
15. Yeah.
It says the question is not open for voting, and it says on your screen voting is closed as well.
Oh. I don't know why. So, because there were 3 people doing that today, so okay, I will reset the results. So I will start again. I hope that okay, now it's not closing, so please start again. So as you can see here, so can you do it now?
I'm still getting this question is not open for voting message.
It's weird because as you can see here should be open. This is quite weird. If not, in the meantime, if you want, you can. I know that the session is recorded, that it would be also nice if you could present yourself in order for us, also for the breakout groups, to know which is your point now, your standing point, your situation now within ORCID and within your repository. So anyone would like to present? Or not?
Maybe I can start. My name is Oliver Goldschmidt from the University of Technology in Hamburg, Germany. I have joined this webinar just because I'm curious about what you will be telling us. We have an ORCID integration in our DSpace repository. We are using DSpace Chris, and so I'm just here to hear what others are doing with ORCID.
Thank you.
I'll go next then. I'm Paul Stokes. I'm from JISC. We also have ORCID integration in our repository. It's pretty basic. It allows you to put in your name and your ORCID ID, and it does a check to make sure it's in the right format. That's about as far as it goes in that bit there. So I'm also here to learn a bit more about what people are doing and how to improve on that. I also should mention that I need to drop out on the hour. I'm sorry about that, but so I should just about be able to squeeze in the workshops, and after that, no reporting back there from me.
Thank you.
Can I go next? I'm sorry, I don't have a camera. I'm in my office, so I don't have a camera here. I work at the University of Belgrade Computer Center Repository Development Team, and we have a series of some 25 repositories, and we are using DSpace. ORCIDs are integrated, but it's a kind of a workaround. It's not, for example, our ORCIDs are not available through the metadata harvesting protocol yet. So we will probably resolve this as we plan to switch to DSpace 7. We're currently using DSpace 5.10. And we are hoping to resolve this issue when we switch to DSpace 7. We tried to find a better workaround to push ORCIDs through the metadata harvesting protocol, but we weren't satisfied with the idea suggested by the community. But actually we have an external application where we use ORCIDs to normalize our author data. So it's very, very useful, and it works quite well. So I'm here just to pick up our technical team couldn't attend, so I'm here to pick up some useful information that may be applied.
Thank you. So the Menti is now working. I can also see that people are already voting and answering the questions. Sorry about that. Is there someone else that would like to talk about yeah, your situation, or what do you expect from this workshop?
Hi, could you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my camera is not working. So I'm Kate Peshkhanova. I'm from New York University. We use ORCID, but we haven't yet, we mint ORCID for some of our library patterns, but we haven't integrated yet it with a repository, but we are now deploying NVIDIA RDM, and we want to integrate it with NVIDIA.
Thank you.
Hi, Alicia, Paloma, Magdalena.
Hi.
Emilio Lorenzo from Arbo. Well, we have integrated the full services with ORCID in 3 repositories: Spanish Oceanographic Institute, University of Rosario in Colombia, and also CATMUS, the repository of European University Institute in Florence. We made some subsystem to collect the ORCID authorization from authors to be able to the repository to integrate fully. But in the past, we have stopped to offer to make this kind of integration because, well, the number of situations, the number of use case of articles and other types, object types is quite made the integration quite complex. But in the past month, we have seen that other system as Open Journal system, not is a very connected world, has made a quite, in my opinion, a quite simple way to integrate without collecting these authors' authorizations. Probably in the future we will transit this model better than the biggest integration of collecting authorization and then asking the author to deposit. I think that is a quite better approach that the people from Open Journal system has taken. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm sharing now also the answers from the first question, and the second question is also open now. And I don't know if someone else would also like to talk about their or his experience and share also what to expect from this workshop, or to present herself. Well, for now, only 2 people replied to the question, what challenges do you see in integrating ORCID with your repository? On the other side, we saw that there are already many people integrating the ORCID to your repositories. And anyway, HR system is a good one. ORCID API evolution. I think Paloma is talking later about the API. ORCID is integrated via the university quiz installation. The number of people, authors who use ORCID versus the number of authors who don't. Okay, we have 9 people replying. Software doesn't support placing ORCID in standard metadata file, and ORCID not visible through. I think also probably Paloma can also help you. She's also the expert from ORCID, so she can hopefully also reply to some of the questions you have.
I don't know if you would like to cover those questions now, Alicia, or in the breakout sessions?
I think in the breakout sessions.
Okay, so
because,
then.
Yeah, I was waiting only because we have 9 replies. I can go to the next question. If you have questions that you would like to address today, please write them here so that we will at least try to reply the questions during the session. And if not, even after the session. You have also our contact details, and you will also get slides later. So you can add the questions in the Mentimeter or later on in the breakout sessions. So Paloma also wrote the APA version policy in the chat so that you can also.
Yes, this is what, because one of the challenges was the ORCID API evolution I saw. So this is the policy, how ORCID works with the API versions. And of course, it's always that we build on the past version, but we don't delete the past version, or we always have further functionalities in the coming versions, but of course the past versions are always active in the sense of permissions and so on.
Okay, so if you want, we can go to the presentations. So the order will be Paloma will start, then Magdalena will be the next one, and I will be the last one. So I give you the floor, Paloma, and then I
stop. You should stop sharing your screen.
Yes, I'm doing it now.
Great. So I'm just, I will briefly present here. So there we are. Okay, so I will cover just a couple of points. First of all, the goal of ORCID, as you might know, is to have interoperation and interoperability between systems, and of course, covering different PID systems. So we would like publications and data to be identified with their corresponding persistent identifier, also institutions with their corresponding persistent identifier, such as GRID, ROR, Ringgold, also funders with fundref, and so on, so that we have connections and reliable connections between elements. And of course, authors will be identified with their ORCID ID. I need to highlight here that ORCID IDs are for are not for historical authors, since we do have this principle of user-driven and users being always in the middle. When we talk about implementations, which are the use of the ORCID API within the system, we speak about not only the technical part, which is integrating the ORCID API, but also the community engagement. I saw a couple of comments saying the adoption of ORCID and that ORCID isn't as widely used as it could be. And in fact, this is something that will always growing, the number of active IDs. Currently, there are 11 million ORCID IDs, and a few less that are active. This means that have connections. And of course, one of the ideas is not only having the ORCID API integrated in an institutional system, but also talking to researchers, talking to staff, and engaging the community so that we, at the end, have a widely adoption of ORCID. Apart from the these aspects that I mentioned, the connection with other PIDs and so on, there are different tools that are public and can be used to enrich metadata or enhance metadata, such as the public data file, and also the public API to collect authenticated ORCID IDs. We had previously a comment on OGS, Open Journal System, for example, in Open Journal Systems, or also DSpace Freeze. You have mentioned as well, a couple of you, those can be built not only using the member API, but also the public API, enabling the authentication, which is the collection of the correct ORCID ID with the corresponding author authorization. When we plan to integrate ORCID in a system, we have two possibilities. One is here to contact your consortium manager if you are in a country where a ORCID consortium is built. Otherwise, you can contact ORCID directly to the corresponding engagement leads to help you structuring a plan how to integrate ORCID in your institution. There are a couple of enabled systems, which are systems that have a kind of out-of-the-box integration with ORCID, such as OGS, for example. And then there are a couple of questions to consider. Which systems would you like to connect to ORCID? What information would you like to obtain or add from your ORCID records, from your researchers' ORCID records? What resources do you need? We had the personnel resources previously as a comment. So do you need a developer to implement the API, or do you need a repository manager to provide more information, or maybe a communication person? And also how you want to communicate that you are implementing or that you have completed your implementation. There are also a number of ORCID-enabled systems that are certified, which means that we have pre-reviewed and pre-approved that functionality of authenticating ORCID IDs and update ORCID IDs to records. Currently, we have 14 of those certified service providers, but there are more to come in 2021. For example, ePrints as a repository service, or Genway as a publishing system. And then once we have selected the system, when we have analyzed the people that we need for that, then we can start developing and testing. So we need to check the ORCID technical documentation, request sandbox credentials to test, and then production, then decide how the API is going to be used and which permissions are going to be needed. If we want to read public information, read limited information, if we want to add person update details or just works and funding and employment and other activities. Then we need to test all these and demonstrate the corresponding ORCID implementation, and then integrate the production credentials. Of course, that demonstration is helpful because then we can check that all the best practices are fulfilled, and we can comment on further technical details that the organization might be having, such as which permissions, API scopes, and so on. And when collecting permissions, it is very important that we use an authorization process so that we actually create those reliable connections between the platform using ORCID and the ORCID registry. And ideally, we won't recommend to use just the manual addition of ORCID IDs or a lookup, because that will mean that we are adding the incorrect data, or that we are just looking up because of the name, and that might create manual errors at the end. And another possibility that we are deploying now for consortium members is using the affiliation manager, which is a part of the member portal available for now for consortia members at ORCID. And here we can also collect permissions from authors via this platform and add affiliations to the ORCID record. There are a couple of data protection aspects that we are finalizing before rolling this out in Europe for European and UK members. And that will be it for now. The questions are going to be part of the session, the working or the breakout session. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
So then I'm going to continue, and I'm going to tell you what we at TUWien did with ORCID. And I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. So, okay. We've had a institutional repository for a couple of years now at TUWien, but we decided to move to another repository software in 2020. The repository software we used prior to DSpace Chris, which we're using now, didn't exactly meet our needs anymore because, for instance, most prominently, we were not able to integrate ORCID in our old repository system. So we had to migrate to another system to make it possible. So we went live in 2020 in September. So it hasn't been a year yet. And we're running on DSpace Chris. The Chris part is going to be explained later on. Our current repository is focused on two main points. So we are trying to link, as in we're linking to internal and external databases. Our repository before was not really integrated in our TUWien landscape, so to say. We had no connection to our existing publication database, for instance. We had no integration of the project database that we have at TUWien. So we decided, okay, our new system will have to be able to speak to all those other systems that we have at TUWien. And another point was that we noticed we had in the old system a lot of free text fields, and it was just simply information that we entered, and if you did not enter it correctly, well, that's simply how it was saved. And so we decided to focus more on standardization. We're now using the sort of authority files that DSpace actually also provides in the entity type. So we have, for instance, authority files for journals. We have sort of authority files for names, for people. We're planning to use authority files for conferences and also for instance, book publications if you enter a chapter. And we also want we are also using a lot of vocabulary that is standardized, as in, for instance, the core vocabulary example would be the manuscript version, how you name the manuscript version if you are self-archiving. So those were the two main focuses of our new repository, still is. And we are actually currently in the process of migrating the old publication database. We've had a publication database for, I don't know how many years now. It feels like 25, but it probably is not 25, 15 probably. So it's a really old publication database, which is also the reason why we were not able to link our old repository to the publication database. And so we decided that with our repository being DSpace CRIS being able to handle a publication database or CRIS system, we're going to merge our two systems. We're going to fuse into one system, which will have two functions, as in a repository on the one hand and the publication database on the other hand. So how does the system look like? We have one system in the middle, and we have a metadata only part which will go live this year around autumn or winter. And we also will have the continued repository. They don't exactly overlap, as you can see in the graph, because we do have some parts of our repository which are not typically parts of a publication database. Publication database is for having a current record of what is published at TÜV, and we in the repository are actually doing a lot of, not a lot, but we are going to do a lot of digitalization, which will also be uploaded to the repository. So it's not really part of the repository of the DSpace publication database, so to say. As you can see, we have a lot of databases or systems we are talking to. Might have forgotten one or two because we really tried to speak to a lot of systems. But as you can see, all the ways that we have are more or less one way. So for instance, we're using the information from the project database, but if we change information in the repository, we do not send the information back to the project database. Yeah, which is maybe not the ideal way, but it's the way it works. Or for instance, we're sending the information to our library system. Our library system, we're using ALMA, Mark 21. And the issue with our library system is, as you might know or not, some library systems are able to handle ORCIDs. Currently, we do not have a way to integrate the ORCIDs that we have in our repository in our library system. So you can only search for ORCIDs if the publishers on the publisher websites added the ORCIDs, but you can't search for the ORCID if our repository saved the ORCID, which is really weird, but it's one of those problems that we have if not all systems are in line with the same other systems. Regarding ORCID, you can see that we have an ORCID integration via our internal database for personnel. So we're using that integration, and we don't have a direct integration of ORCID to our repository, DSpace repository, but it's via a third database, so to say. So the ORCID is saved in our internal personnel database, and if you're typing in the name of the person, you can add the person as a contributor to a publication, and then the ORCID is integrated as well. We do use ORCID. I'm pretty sure it's a public API for lookup of people. So if a person is not from TÜV, we don't have the person saved in our internal database, obviously. And so you can look up via the ORCID lookup and add the person via the ORCID API. And the only downside is we actually don't have, as I've mentioned before, we don't have a direct integration of ORCID to DSpace or DSpace to ORCID. And we actually do not export the publication data metadata yet to ORCID. it's one of our future plans, but currently it's just a one-way street, so to say. You can import metadata from ORCID, but we cannot send publication metadata back to ORCID. You could integrate ORCID, or you could get an update of our metadata if you've used the DataSite API. So we're using DataSite for our DUIs. And if you added DataSite as a trusted organization, that's what it's called, then you can automatically update your ORCID with your publication information. But it's more or less a roundabout way which you have implemented right now. So I'm going to show you now so currently we have, as I've said, saved the ORCID in the personnel database. You can see it here with my name, and my ORCID ID is saved within our internal system. And the internal system then asks, okay, what are you as a researcher are going to allow TOVEN to do with the ORCID? And for instance, you could say, okay, I allow TOVEN to add TOVEN as my affiliation to the ORCID record. So that's the only part that we've implemented now. And we're going to roll out a wider use by adding another probably a check mark that says I do want to add my publication list to ORCID via our TOVEN integration. But as I've said, not integrated yet. So what are we using ORCID? As I've said, we are using it to import metadata. We're using it to export the affiliation information, and we're using it to import researchers' names that are not from TOVEN. And as I've mentioned, via DataSite, you could potentially integrate metadata to ORCID, but it's more or less a roundabout way. Hopefully soon we're going to be able to publish, to not only pull, but also to push the publication metadata from DSpace to ORCID, probably on the timeline after we've migrated the publication database, because that one's finding a lot of resources currently. So that's it from my side on the integration of ORCID at TOVEN. And over to you, Alicia.
Okay, now I'm talking about which resources and what types of actions also, and which type of resources ORCID has for you to implement or start with ORCID and try to increase your community building. So first of all, I think it's important. I don't know if maybe if you are starting, and many of you are already starting or are considering now to implement and to integrate ORCID in your organization. There are like different resources. You have resources for members. You have resources for developers, also for researchers, and for consortia, because also when you can use ORCID being a member, where you will have like different options and some solutions, for instance, to integrate ORCID in your repositories, but you can also start with ORCID without being a member. And this is, I think, something that is also quite important, because a membership is not always possible. And talking about memberships, you can have an individual membership, but you can also have or consider to have a consortia. This is the case what has been done in Austria, where a consortia for the whole country has been created, and this makes it a bit easier for organizations to join. Something that is important is when you are considering integration with ORCID is check the enabled systems that they are. This list is a live list or living list, so anyone can send information to that. You have the link here where you can check all the enabled systems, and you will see that you can also order by category, by system name, and then also the different information that is collected is, for instance, if you can read from records, if you can add affiliations, can add works and funding, and so on. As I said, this list can vary, and this because it's live. So one of the issues that you can check are the ORCID features and configuration steps that can change among the different systems. And then in order to use these features, it's true that you need a membership. Then if you go to the integration guide, this is, you will find all the help and all the steps that you can, that can help you to integrate this, this ORCID. For instance, if you, it could be possible that you need, that you are new to ORCID and APIs, then you can also go to a sample workflows, and then you can check all the practices. You have also different technical tutorials and specific documentation. Something that I found very, very useful is that there is an ORCID API users group where people also ask questions and discuss about how to do things better and easier. So you can use the experience of others to make your work also a bit easier. Then something that is also a very important point regarding resources is the complete documentation that you have from by ORCID. This documentation includes different. It's not only by features and or not only about features and workflows, but you can also go to this integration guide so that you will get all the small steps, like how to start with the integration. As Paloma was mentioned before, we have like this sandbox texting server. You can also have different APIs, the public API and the member API, and how to register for that, and so, as well as many other information, also customizing and communicating with ORCID. Regarding outreach, we can think about, or we think about 3 A's. The first A is anticipation. So build anticipation as in order to prepare the situation. Then encouraging engagement with ORCID. This will be like action. And then the awareness about the support of ORCID or going ORCID, and also reiterating messages about the ORCID's value. So regarding the first one, building anticipation, the idea is very important to educate your researchers and let them know what is ORCID, what is, why is this important, what are the benefits, and you can set like clear agreement within your organization. Also to talk about which integrations are possible and are available to your researchers. And for instance, ideas to do that, you can, for instance, include, for instance, help people to create an ORCID if they have not one, and give them some ideas about blog posts or trainings, or add the content about ORCID in your web pages and so on, so that if people do not have an ORCID, they can create one. If they already created one, it's also important to connect ORCID with all different trusted organizations, and also let researchers that they will be probably later at some point an ORCID integration to your institution. Then in the second one, they take action. So the idea is to engage with ORCID. In that case, it's very important to enable that researchers can create or connect the ORCID with the organization and give permission to the institution to be a trusted organization. You can also have some ideas to engage with that, like emailing researchers, dropping events, and even like try to find like champions. So the idea is, again, quite a lot of training and outreach. I will show you some examples of outreach materials that ORCID already has. We can also create some, for instance, at the TU we have a workshop like every 6 months or every semester, so that we help researchers and explain how to create an ORCID record, why is this important, how to curate different profiles and connect the different profiles, like in Scopus or Dimensions or Babylons, and how to connect the different profiles with ORCID. We also, for instance, work together with the research data management team, and we also explain when like PIDs are very important in the context of research data management, for instance. And then the third one would be like engage with awareness and create this educate researchers about these key messages and ideas. For instance, for reiterating these key messages can be use or examples, use ORCID in the signatures, or when we are doing like presentations or workshops, or also it's important the distribution of ORCID materials. Some examples of materials, they can be, for instance, we have like, or we can have from ORCID. We are only an institution and a consortia. So what we do is we try to use the most of the resources by ORCID to create also this ORCID culture and this PIDs culture, which is very important also, as I said before, in the context of research data management, also for funders, and also relating with a credit taxonomy, for instance, and so on. So you have like flyers, banners, bookmarks, infographics, and this you can, so you don't need to create new materials when you are explaining to your researchers what is ORCID and how to set preferences or how to implement ORCID in the workflow. Also, as I would say managers or librarians helping our researchers, we can get involved. For instance, checking what are the upcoming ORCID events or webinars. There are also a lot of video tutorials that are already have been recorded, pre-recorded. For me, one of the most important or interesting ones are the community building. So this community of ORCID, and also check the publishers and funders of letters about ORCID, because this is ORCID is only one small part of the whole scholarly communication context. So we have funders, we have publishers, we have researchers, institutions, and where all of them come together, like PIDs are a key point or a key issue, and ORCID, I think I might say that ORCID has been said, or we can consider ORCID as the main important PID for people, for researchers. So this would be from my part. Now we should go to the breakout groups. We have 3 different, I could share, should I share also the different questions?